Right, let's get started. So this is the second video in a three little video series. I think that's a tactic that we're going to really dig into, where we have smaller videos that address a large topic, but in little bits. That way we can kind of just break it down into little segments. So in this segment, we're going to talk about the price of staying informed, the price of, I want to say voluntary, but it's a part of the default mode network. It's a part of habitual action when we're constantly reaching and filling the space of every second with information in one form or another. It's information, it's data. And in the previous video, we talked about how that data is a lot like an ocean, and it creates like a bubble around you that you're swimming in. And the more information, the more pressure, the more that pressure can cause the vessel, in this case, it was a submarine, to buckle and to crush. And the same thing happens with the human brain, only we don't smoke like a broken robot. We start to have dysfunctional cognition, and we start to have, from that, dysfunctional behavior. And by dysfunctional, I mean it's behavior and it's thought that isn't connecting to the world around us. It's not helping us. It's not helping people around us. It's just somewhat wasteful. And then I press the present button. So the price of staying informed, decision fatigue, and the death of agency. Now, the timing, I think, for this video is impeccable because, especially if you live in the US, there's just nonstop news and very little of it is encouraging. So I think a lot of people are feeling that there is a necessity, that there's a need for them to stay informed. To some extent, perhaps, but to what extent? Is it to the point that we're going to fill our space around us so that it's a lot like that ocean that we were talking about in the previous analogy, where eventually the pressure and the weight from all of that just crushes us internally? And so imagine yourself in like the center of a snow globe. I use this example in at least one of my books, where if you imagine that you're in the center of a snow globe and the globe is going around you and you're in the center of that, that is your bubble of perception. A lot of the raw data that's out there that's filling the ether is just white noise. It is not important. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant or relative to you or your life, no matter how badly they try to make it. I can sit here and recite medicine commercials because they're catchy and it is, engaging, and there's a lot of color and a lot of activity in these commercials, but they don't matter to me. Not, I mean, not really. I don't have that disease and I don't need that medication. And I guess as a medical professional, it's good to know, but I don't need to memorize their jingles. That's a bit extreme, but what can I say? You see them all the time and it constantly fills your bubble of perception. It's such a big part of your snow globe that it's hard to miss. So, you know, how do we know? How do we parse through all of this? So when there's constant information, this is information. Right now, this video, my words in your ear is a form of information. Is this valuable? Is this where you want to put your attention? I think that's an important question to ask, and hopefully you do, because that's why you're here. Well, in deciding what we're going to listen to, sometimes when we're switching tasks from one thing to another, and we talked about this in previous videos, and I talk about it in my book, at least in a couple spots, this costs physical energy, ATP. So we're using glucose energy, and the brain uses an upwards of 20%. For some people, it's more. I think actually for some people it might be less, and I'm just being cheeky because I think physiologically it's about the same, but I I don't know. I don't know. I live in Chicago and sometimes I'm just like, I don't think that's 20% over there. But I digress. The result, when the volume exceeds the capacity, it crushes the system. And the path of least resistance is where the mind goes. And we talk about this in a biological sense in the default mode network. So remember that the default mode network and the task positive network, you're operating on one of the two at all times, and it's oscillating back and forth like yin and yang. So the idea is that at a certain point, this switching back and forth and all of the energy that we're using, it's just going to cause the mind to revert to default mode because you don't have the energy to continue to do the parsing, to continue to be very specific and deliberate with your attention. Because while that does cost energy, we're bankrupt at that point. We have nothing left in the tank. Bankrupt, nothing left in the tank. I got to remember that. I like those analogies. I think I use the bankruptcy a lot in my book, but I do also like the idea of the gas tank starting. You're running on fumes at a certain point, right? That's a good one too. Now, this is something that in our society we have to actually learn this. To some extent, you could say that we're born helpless. I get that, but what we're talking about more is the atrophy of agency when you feel like you have all of these things coming at you and there's so many of them, you're just like, but there's just nothing I can do. You know, why would I care about using my own bags at the grocery store? There's just nothing I can do. There's just so much trash. It's just, I'm not going to make any difference. And that's just a bunch of BS. That's the way that we start to talk to ourselves when we're feeling helpless. Right. And in the slides, I say there's 17 different catastrophes in your feed while you're scrolling. And it's just like, does it really matter? Does my mind and the things that I think and the actions that I perform, how relevant are they really? And then the shutdown response, which is really going back to the default mode network in the brain's attempt to save that metabolic energy. It wants to save ATP. It wants to conserve the glucose so that it can use that for other things, such as walking, running. The beating of the heart is pretty important. So we need to make sure we have lots of ATP for that. So I'm not prepared to say that a person who is in this shutdown response is lazy, although that's the label that that person will start to get from the world around them when they see that they're not really getting things done because internally they've started to shut down. And the reason that they've started to shut down internally is because of this information deluge. It's just too much. The system, the hull is buckling in our ship, and it's just too much pressure. And now I'm going to go back to default mode network so my brain can save some metabolic energy. And now I'm in this low reactive state, and my neurological defenses are now down. So it's just going to get even worse. And this type of response is very common. And at the end of the day, it's just so taxing and it required so much energy. And you may not even be able to put these things into perspective while they're happening because they're just happening. And it's like, oh, I just feel so tired. I worked so hard today, even though I didn't really do anything physically, but my brain feels tired and I'm just emotionally spent and I just don't have time for this. That's a pretty popular type of mood or mode to be in. That's a state of being that's very common in our world today with the information in such access like it is. Now, the engagement trap it goes a lot with this idea that, we need to be informed. We need to click this thing. I have to know what's in it. But, the fact is that's all a part of the commodification. I think that's a word. Commodifying human attention, commodifying the human being, turning them into a consumer. And so some of the information that they're putting out there, they don't give two hoots if it's true or not, if it's factual, if it's helpful, if it's informative. They just want you to click. And I'm sure you've heard this term rage bait before, because sometimes they just want you to be angry. And any type of engagement just increases the algorithm so that you click on that more. And then so more of that information is going to start to show up. And then before you know it, the structure of this algorithm of information is been crafted. Maybe not necessarily with your permission, but it's been curated with the unconscious mind. So a lot of the information that we're being exposed to, it's not by accident. There's a lot of reasons that, kids' toys and things like that, that doesn't come up on my feed because I don't care about that, right? And I don't view that as important. And I don't click on that kind of stuff. So, if you go to my Instagram, you're going to see a lot of dogs. You're going to see dogs and you're going to see some basketball, some good basketball plays that happened this week. Because I try to be very specific with what I click on so that the structure of that algorithm is something more reflected of things that I value. Now, this is an important topic, and especially with AI. We talk about people Googling something or asking AI something, and then they present this information as if I am the expert. That is unearned knowledge. It's a type of arrogance associated to knowledge that they did not painstakingly put into their brain. They're just looking at it and reflecting it from another source. And that other source may not be completely accurate, as we know that AI, also depending on how you ask the questions, is not accurate all the time. So we don't even know if the stuff that we're saying as we're absolute fact, we don't even know if that's true. Not really, because it's not really our knowledge. It's not something that we have gone through the process of putting into the mind membrane. We're basically just perpetrating and pretending that this information is our own. And then we get this term, I like it, called intellectual tourists, right? They're just there to take pictures. They don't really know. I think Shayna and we went on a tour one time in Arizona where it was very much like this. Like the guy giving us the tour, I think he just arrived. I don't think he knew what he was talking about. In fact, if I had the ability to go back in time and record him, I think he was making it up. I think some of the stuff he was just straight up making up because he didn't know. And that's kind of what we mean by intellectual tourism. So in the next video, we're going to talk about, because we set this up, right? We're going to talk about how to navigate this. So we have all of this information. It's in our bubble of perception. It's a lot like an ocean. It's starting to crush us. We don't know what to look at. It's causing us a lot of energy. And now it's like, well, what the heck do we do? That's the way it goes. And if you're really interested, we have a book companion that will be available soon. It is called Igong, The Definitive Practice. It goes over the 4 directions. It goes over all of these things in very vivid detail. And all of these videos, they correspond with that book. So you may find it useful. But if you get the opportunity and you still have some time left in the day, please check out the 3rd video in the series because I think it's really important. We've set the stage, but now we got to help you understand what needs to be done next. Like, what do we actually do with this? So I really appreciate you hanging out and watching this video. And if you can, throw a like, maybe subscribe, do all of that kind of stuff if you feel inspired to. All right. Thanks a lot. See you again soon.